The Guardian Angel is a captivating novel that explores the complexities of human nature and love. The story revolves around the protagonist Myrtle Hazard, a young woman who is believed to be protected by a guardian angel due to near miraculous survival from several near-death experiences. As she grows, she finds herself torn between two men, the ambitious artist Gifted Hopkins and the noble lawyer Clement Lindsay. The novel delves into the themes of destiny, spirituality, and the power of love as Myrtle navigates her life under the watchful eyes her guardian angel. In chapter 1, Myrtle Hazard has been missing from her home in this place since Thursday morning, June 16. Years old, tall and womanly for her age, has dark hair and eyes, fresh complexion, regular features, pleasant smile and voice, but shy with strangers. Her common dress was a black and white gingham check straw hat trimmed with green ribbon. It is feared that she may have come to harm in some way or be wandering at large in a state of temporary mental alienation. Any inform relating to the missing child will be gratefully received and properly rewarded by her afflicted aunt, Miss Silence Withers, residing at the Withers homestead, otherwise known as the Populars in this village. In chapter 2, a sort of hysteric twitching that went through the frame of Cynthia Bedlam dimly suggested to the old nurse that she was not making her slightly indiscreet personality much better by her explanation. She stopped short and surveyed the not uncomely person of the maiden lady sitting before her with a handkerchief pressed to her eyes, and one hand clenching the arm of the rocking chair, as if some spasm has clamped it there. The nurse looked at her with a certain growing interest she had never felt before. It was the first time for some years that she had such a chance, partly because Miss Cynthia had often been away for long periods, partly because she herself had been busy professionally. There was no occasion for her services, of course. The family at the Poplars, and she was always following around from place to place. After that everlasting migratory 6 weeks or 6 or less old baby, they were out on Bear Hill the whole day, beating up the bushes as it for game, scaring old crows out their rug nests, and in one dark glen startling a fierce-eyed, growling bobtailed catamount, who sat spitting and looked all ready to spring at them, on the tall tree where he clung with his claws unsheathed until a young fellow came up with a gun and shot him dead. They went through and through the swamp and Muckwash Hollow, but found nothing better than a wicked old snapping turtle, evil to behold with his snaky head and alligator tail, but worse to meddle with it if his horny jaws were near enough to spring their man-trap on the curious experimenter. At Wood End there were some Indians, ill-conditioned savages, in a dirty tent, making baskets, the miracle of which was that they were so clean. They had seen a young lady answering the description about a week ago. She had bought a basket, asked them if they had a canoe they wanted to sell. Eyes like hers, pointing to a squaw with a man's hat on. At Pocase, the young men explored all the thick woods, some who ought to have known better taking their guns, which made a talk, as one might well suppose it would. Hunting on a Sabbath day, they didn't mean to shoot Myrtle Hazard, did they? It was keenly asked. A good many said it was all nonsense, and mere excuse to get away from meeting and have a short frolic on pretense that it was a work of necessity and mercy, one or both. While they were scattering themselves about in this way, some in earnest, some rejoicing in the unwanted license, lifting off for a little while than that enormous Sabbath day pressure which raised the 40 atmosphere on which true-born Puritan two young men had been since Friday in search of the lost girl, each following a clue of his own and determined to find her if she was among the living. Cyprian Evelet made for the village of Mapleton, where his sister Olive was staying, trusting that with her aid he might get a clue to the mystery of Myrtle's disappearance. William Murray Bradshaw tracked for a railroad train going to the great seaport at a station where it stops for wood and water. In the meantime, a third young man, Gifted Hopkins by name, son of the good woman already mentioned, sat down with tears in his eyes, and wrote those touching stanzas, The Lost Myrtle, which were printed in the next banner and oracle. And
Good morning, everyone. This is the continuation of our report and summary of the Guardian Angel, Chapter 3 Antecedents. The Withers homestead was the oldest mansion in town. It was built on the east bank of the river, a little above the curve which gave the name to Oxbow village. It stood on an elevation, its west gable close to the river's edge, an old orchard and a small pond, and at the foot of the slope behind it, woods and the east, open to the south, with a great row of Lombardy poplars standing guard in front of the house. Long afterwards, a bay window, almost a little room of itself, had been thrown out of the second story on the west side so that it looked down on the river running beneath it. The chamber, thus half suspended in the air, had been for years the special apartment Myrtle, Hazard, and the boy paddling day, for it shone no Sabbath day for the young men within a half dozen miles of the village. At Wood End there were some Indians, all conditions savages in a dirty tent, making baskets, the miracle of which was that they were so clean. They had seen a young lady answering the descriptions about weeks ago. She had brought a basket, asked them if they had a canoe they wanted to sell. While they were scattering themselves about in this way, some in earnest, some rejoicing in the unwanted license, lifting off for a little while that innermost Sabbath day, pressure which with like 40 atmosphere in every true-born Puritan. Two young men had been since Friday in search of the lost girl, each following a clue of his own and determined to find her if he was among the living about on the river, would often catch glimpses through the window of the little girl dressed in the scarlet jacket she fancied in those days. One of them, Cyprian Elevet, had given it a name which became current among the young people, and indeed furnished the subject of one of his earliest poems to Gifted Hopkins to wit, The Firehand Bird's Nest. There are many circumstances familiar to common observers which favor this belief to a certain extent. Thus, one At one moment, we detect the look, at another, the tone of voice, at another, some characteristics, movement of this or that ancestor in our relations or others. There are times our friends do not act like themselves, but apparently in obedience to some other law than that of their own proper nature, though well, all things both awake and asleep, which surprise us. Perhaps we have co-tenants in this house we live in. Thou hast made a covenant, O Lord, with me and my children forever. The story had calmed down that Anne Holyoke spoke these words in a prayer she offered up at the stake. After the fagots were kindled, there had been also a legend in the family that the martyred woman spirit exercised a kind of supervision over the descendants, that she either manifested herself to them or in some way impressed them from time to time. The wife of Selah Withers was accused of sorcery in the evil days of 1718. Major Gideon Withers, her son, was of the common type of hearty, loud, portly men who like to show themselves at military trainings and to hear themselves shout orders at masters or declaim patriotic sentiments at town meeting and in the general court. A relation of Myrtle's father, wife of another captain, was returning to America on a visit, and the child was sent back under her care while still a mere infant to her relatives at the old homestead. There was a child who was delivered into the hands of Miss Silence Withers, her aunt on the father's side, keeping house with her brother Milachi, a bachelor already called Old Malachi, though hardly entitled by his years to such a venerable prefix. The little Indian, as Milachi called her, was an awkward accession to the family. 40 years of practice had taught Nurse Bailow the art of handling the young of her species with the soft firmness which one may notice in cats with their kittens, more grandly in a Tony Leonis mouthing her cubs. The other discovery was of a small hoard of coin under one of the boards which formed the imperfect flooring of the garret was hidden an old leader mittens. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil had shaken its fruit into her lap, and without any serpent to tempt her, she took thereof and did it. So, ma'am, thank you.